Welcome to Order from Ashes, the Century Foundation's International Affairs podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the future of the Muslim Brotherhood, and we're joined by one of the foremost experts in the organization, researcher Abdelrahman Ayyash, author of a recent report called The Turkish Future of the Muslim Brotherhood for the Century Foundation, and also joined by TCF's own Michael Wahid Hanna, who's been a close watcher of all things Egypt and of the Brotherhood, I think, for his entire life. Both of you, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Abdelrahman, let's start with some basics. Why does the Muslim Brotherhood even matter or have any significance at this point in time?
So, as you know, Thanassis, the Muslim Brotherhood has been in Egypt, or actually in the Arab world, for more than 8 decades now, maybe more than 9 decades now. The movement has been struggling in Egypt to reach power for many years. And in 2011, after the revolution that ousted late President Hosni Mubarak, the Muslim Brotherhood was the only party to win all elections they participated in, whether parliamentary or presidential. The Muslim Brotherhood, regardless the tough repression they have been going through since the early days of the Republic, or even before that, during the last days of the monarchy in Egypt, the Brotherhood was able to maintain, to survive and to maintain their presence and their existence in the Egyptian society. I believe, and many other observers believe, that the Muslim Brotherhood or the Islamist movement will not be purged of the earth. They will not be out of the picture anytime soon. Yes, they are hurt. Yes, they are suffering right now. But actually, in many ways, the Muslim Brotherhood is feeding on repression and the idea of victimhood. So what could be seen as the end of the movement from one perspective, from many other perspectives, it could be seen as the another stage of the movement's survival. I believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is not only important in Egypt or as an actor. The Brotherhood is a regional movement, could be an international school of thought. As in the Middle East, the Muslim Brotherhood is powerful in many countries, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Jordan, and of course in even non-Arab countries like Turkey and the region.
And as we go on, I'm going to want to ask you a lot more about the international versus domestic manifestations of the Brotherhood. But sure. Just as we're getting oriented here, historically, the Brotherhood's influence has been based at least on 2 major things, right? One is its organizational prowess. It's managed to recruit dedicated members and raise money. And on the other hand, its ideological vigor in a region of secular authoritarians. It, I think, sometimes alone posed a coherent alternative, with this Islam as the solution, and in some cases a more specific set of programs. And again, before we get into some of the really fascinating details of your recent work on the Brotherhood, I want to ask if you can take stock of those 2 sources of power: its organizational heft and its ideological coherence. How much remains of those 2 aspects of the Brotherhood today?
Yeah. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood still is okay. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood is still very powerful when it comes to especially organization and to some extent the ideology. But for the organization, the Muslim Brotherhood again is able to maintain its presence in the Egyptian society, regardless or notwithstanding the wave of or the crackdown that has been going on for 7 years now. This is the worst crackdown that the Muslim Brotherhood has been through since its foundation in 1928. The ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, I believe that it's much weaker than what Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, intended, or the other leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood throughout its history wanted to be. But at the same time, in comparison with other political ideologies or political parties in Egypt and the region, the Muslim Brotherhood still has considerable power when it comes to thoughts and to ideology. The other thing that we cannot neglect is the numbers of the Muslim Brotherhood supporters. Yes, we don't have very specific figures of the numbers of the Muslim Brotherhood members in Egypt, but the numbers could not be less than 500, maybe 700,000 of active members.
And
Most
these are like
members,
these are like party cadres who are activists, as opposed to like, you know, maybe some of our listeners think of members as people who show up to vote for something once a year, but you're referring to people who are actively involved in organization building activities, right?
Yes. Mainly, they are active members, or they are active cadres, as you said, but also they are supporting the organization with finance, and they are financing the organization, and this is the main point of power of the Muslim Brotherhood, that the members of the organization are really the main supporter of its finances, and we are talking about grassroots movement. For example, the member of the Muslim Brotherhood in any specific place or neighborhood in Egypt has to pay, could be up to 10% of his monthly income to the organization,
which I think is unheard of for other political organizations in the region. And one more point of context that I want to ask Michael and then you to weigh in on, and then we can turn to other questions. But the Brotherhood has really loomed large, and throughout the entire post World War II period for the autocrats in the region, as well as for intervening foreign governments in the West. Why, Michael, is the Brotherhood the sort of center of obsession or the center of fear for those forces that have tried to prop up usually secular authoritarian alternatives?
Well, I mean, as we've been recounting, the Brotherhood is a robust organization with real organic grassroots support. It's a real thing. And in a region that has lacked organized civilian-led politics, it was one of the few refuges for organized political life. It also has the added veneer of religious dogma and ideology, and that has over the course of the decades since its founding only increased. And I think particularly after 1967, when the failures of Arab nationalism were laid bare, the religious revival that took hold in the region really propelled not just the Brothers, but other Islamists across the region to the forefront. And so it is that long history, it is the ideological background, and a real organizational prowess. And of course, when you see the ouster of Mubarak after the Egyptian uprising in 2011, the Brotherhood, due to these natural advantages, really was able to step into electoral politics in a way that other non-Islamist groups simply couldn't replicate. Now, I think that led to some faulty assumptions and analysis about what that meant for the future. But clearly, in 2011 and 2012, the Brothers were an organized political force that had no peer in Egyptian political life. And again, they have an organization, they have monetary support, they have transnational links, but most importantly, they have an organic, grassroots support. It's a real thing, and in a region that lacks a lot of real political movements, it looms large because it is one of those very few alternatives to the authoritarians of the region.
Now, inside Egypt, the Brotherhood has an almost, I was going to say uninterrupted, but we can think of the 50s as a bit of an interruption. But anyway, it's an uninterrupted political presence since 1928. Outside Egypt, sometimes in the region, and especially in the West, I hear analysts who I think should know better talk about the Brotherhood as a sort of coherent transnational bogeyman, and they wouldn't identify it as an Egyptian group. They would identify it as an international group with local branches, and they would connect Hamas, maybe the Iraqi Islamic Party, and sometimes a whole concatenation of Sunni Islamists from around the region, whom they identify as part of a single Brotherhood entity. Now, I think the simplistic that simplistic picture is probably not accurate, but it might also not be accurate to say that these things are completely unrelated. Can either of you walk us through what the correct way of thinking of the Brotherhood's transnational profile is?
Well, I can jump in quickly. I think there is a transnational profile. I think it's important when thinking about the Brothers, the Egyptian variant, to contextualize the fact that they think of themselves as the first among equals. So they have assumed a kind of almost inherited leadership position within the Brotherhood. They have been the most important organization within the broader international landscape, and there is linkage. They do see themselves as having these close relationships, but more often I would say these groups move in parallel. They're not giving orders from an international Politburo. You have like-minded organizations that exist and have their own organic support within individual countries, but there is some capacity for contact and communication and ideological exchange. But I think it's a mistake to see it as a kind of coherent top-down organization that functions from a kind of central node that gives directives and orders to local branches. It is not that organized.
Abdelrahman?
Yeah, I agree with Michael actually in what he says, but also there is an important factor here that the Muslim Brotherhood are not even coherent inside Egypt. The Brotherhood right now they have a lot of differences, and actually I was saying earlier that the Brotherhood could continue regardless the repression, or actually the movement is feeling on victimhood. But at the same time, the real threat that is facing the Muslim Brotherhood right now could be an internal one. The other thing is that because of course the divisions within the group. The other thing when it comes to transnational politics or transnational presence of the Muslim Brotherhood, I remember, for example, being in Morocco a few years back and meeting with the Prime Minister of Morocco and the former Foreign Minister, and I met also many members of the Islamic Party there, the PGD, the Hizb al-Adala wal-Tanmiya in Morocco, and all members, including the senior leadership, they had critical thoughts and very spiced criticism against the Muslim Brotherhood's leadership in Egypt and against the ideology even of Muslim Brotherhood and the policies that they adopted during their year in power and their electoral policies before that. These differences are not, for me, I believe that they are not tactical differences. These are strategic and deeply rooted ideological differences. What I found in Morocco, I could find also in Turkey, I could find in many other countries that I've talked to activists in, or that I've met Islamist politicians in. Tunisia, of course, is a very clear example. Al-Nahda and Rashid al-Ghannouchi, its leader, has links with the general school of thought of the Muslim Brotherhood, of course. So they stemmed out of the same, of course, religion, and also the same. They used the same literature when it comes to the founding texts of the movement, but when it comes to interpretations, when it comes to political experience, it's totally different. And at some point, yes, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they saw themselves as the first among equals, as Michael said, but this wasn't the acceptable for or it hasn't been acceptable for many or many branches, if I can use this term, of the group outside Egypt. And of course this became much more clear after the military coup that ousted the movement, and when it became clearer for everyone that the experience of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt could not be an example for the rest of the branches of the movement abroad. And after the military coup, everyone or every Islamist now knows that the Muslim Brotherhood could do much better than they did in Egypt.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Today's world is changing faster than ever. Old rules don't apply and the new rules haven't been written. At least not yet. I'm Rohan Advani and I produce the Order from Ashes podcast at the Century Foundation, a leading progressive think tank that promotes peace, cooperation, and equality at home and abroad. On Order from Ashes, we try to make sense of a new international system in which America no longer dictates the global order. Join us as we talk to activists and analysts on the front lines of the most pressing issues in international policy.
I'm Thanassis Cambanis. You're listening to Order from Ashes, the Century Foundation's International Affairs podcast. I'm joined by Abdelrahman Ayyash and Michael Wahid Hanna, and we're talking about the future of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, Abdelrahman, right before the break, you were talking about how after the coup that unseated Morsi, it became clear that the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood couldn't really serve as the model for the other Muslim Brotherhood sort of fellow travelers and sister organizations around the region. Was that because of the MB and Egypt's internal autocracy, because of its overreach? What was it? I mean, I know my take on why that experiment failed, but what was the take of other Islamists in the region on why the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood failed in power? And how did that affect the standing of Egyptian brothers among Islamists region-wide?
Yeah, I think that one of the problems that we should be talking about first is how the Muslim Brotherhood did not consider their mistakes as mistakes. The Muslim Brotherhood, as far as I know, they did not provide any critical view of their 1 year in power and the years before that, in which they were part of the Egyptian politics and the crucial part of the Egyptian politics. The other Islamists, when they look at the Egyptian experience, they will find that the Muslim Brotherhood has been taking a sequence of bad decisions. This started even before the revolution in Egypt. They participated in elections where the rest of political opponents or opposition parties were not in line with that with this idea. They didn't want to participate in the revolution at the beginning, and then after the revolution, they turned the political consensus into a fight over ideology and over identity. Of course, this wasn't the sole mistake of the Muslim Brotherhood, but they sided with the identity politics people who wanted to divide the society over the question of religion and religious values. I'm talking mainly about the Salafis who used identity politics to divide the Egyptian society over religion and religious values. The Muslim Brotherhood sided with these could be right-wing people in Egypt after the revolution, and they distanced themselves from the other civil political parties. They sided with the military when everyone else was against the military, or was for the civil state in Egypt. They even if the Muslim Brotherhood will not have the same narrative, I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood will have a different interpretation of what I'm saying right now. But
so you're diagnosing rigidity, arrogance, overreach, internal authoritarianism. So and I think we the three of us could go on about this all day.
Yes.
But I want to get to you and Michael's sort of newer thinking about the developments since the coup. So since the coup, the Brotherhood is subject to historically unparalleled repression, a crackdown that makes Nasser's crackdown look mild by comparison, driven into exile. I think you estimate maybe 20,000 brothers are in Istanbul alone, or in Turkey alone. So here we are 7 years later. How has the organization transformed or not transformed as a result of this unprecedented pressure within Egypt, and as a result of its unprecedented gap that you describe between its young members and its still rigid old guard?
As I said earlier, Thanassis, the main thing about the Muslim Brotherhood right now is the internal, or the main threat that is the Muslim Brotherhood is facing right now is an internal one. What I mean by that is that one main component of the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology is what it called trust. It means here the trust between the leadership and the membership, and vice versa. We lost this. I mean, we can see now how the members of the Muslim Brotherhood are losing their trust and confidence in their leadership. This happened since, this was very clear during the first days after the military coup, and it became clearer in Turkey and in other countries where the Muslim Brotherhood exists. The Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood exists right now. One of the main things that the youth of the Muslim Brotherhood are talking about is how the leadership is using finances to push for an ideology, or a specific ideology over young people and over other members of the group. The leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood right now, which is composed almost of old members over 60, 65 years old, and sometimes over 80 years old, are controlling the movement, who's basically consisting of young members who are in their 20s and their 30s. The majority of the Muslim Brotherhood right now are still in Egypt, but these people are inactive.
I was actually going to interrupt you to ask, is the leadership in Qatar, or is the leadership also in or are they in prison in Egypt, or are they in Turkey with the bulk of their members?
Actually, the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood are basically outside Egypt. The leadership in prisons, they still have some prisons over decisions, but the main decision makers are outside Egypt. As far as we know, those in Qatar are not representing the majority or the key decision makers in the movement. There are some members, or some senior members, of course, of the movement are based in Doha. But the people or the leaders in Istanbul and the leaders in some other Western capitals, and especially London, are the ones who's ruling the Muslim Brotherhood right now. Just a couple of days ago, the Muslim Brotherhood announced that they are having a shift in management right now because of the arrest of the acting Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mahmoud Izzat, a few weeks back. The leadership right now, and maybe for the first time, is outside Egypt. I mean, by the leadership is the supreme, or the post of the Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the highest office in the organization. It's now held by Ibrahim Munir, who's based in London, and who's one of the who has been one of the most influential leaders in the Muslim Brotherhood since the coup.
So, if I could jump in. I want to ask you, Abdelrahman, we've described this situation of unprecedented repression within Egypt, fragmentation abroad, quite difficult circumstances in some cases, and a kind of multifaceted response to these circumstances. There was a sense in 2013, 2014 that Islamists plus repression would produce radicalism. And of course, we do have some instances of that. I mean, we do see within the Brotherhood radicalizing trends, but not just, right? We see, a turn to disenchantment with politics. We see various kinds of responses. And so I wonder if you could maybe just very briefly sketch out, what you see is the kind of center of gravity of the Brothers. What are the different kinds of responses that we've seen since the events of 2013?
Yeah. I think, you said it rightly. There are many different responses or kinds of responses between among the Muslim Brotherhood members and after the military coup. The first response actually was the indifference regarding politics. I've been monitoring the Muslim Brotherhood for many years, but some leaders and senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood have been talking about how inactive the Muslim Brotherhood membership in Egypt have been after the military coup. They were talking about maybe more than 70% of the Muslim Brotherhood members are now not involved in any kind of activities with the movement. Of course, this is mainly because of the repression, but also in other circumstances, these members were very enthusiastic about continuing their active membership with the group because of their trust in the leadership. But after they lost their trust in the leadership because of the incompetence that was very clear during the 1 year in power, and after that, because the Muslim Brotherhood didn't have any kind of strategy to counter the military coup and to support their bases in Egypt and abroad, those members are not active with the group right now. I think this is the main response, and this is the majority of the movement. The other thing, or the second response could be, yes, radicalization. But what we are talking about here is not like a large scale of radicalization wave. But what happened is that many members who were supported by at least three very senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood. One of them was killed by the security forces, Muhammad Kamal, and two others. One is in Istanbul right now, and the other one is in jail. Those three leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, they supported members to create armed wings or armed factions of the group who committed violence against security forces and maybe military in Egypt. This wasn't the case for the majority of the members, and these groups were represented in maybe different places in Egypt or different governorates in Egypt, but they weren't representing the overwhelming majority of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is mainly comprised of middle class professionals who are, counter-revolutionary by nature. They are not for radical changes and to find a ground for violence or for radical ideas and the Muslim Brotherhood is very difficult.
Well, that's a surprise because historically and in other contexts, historically in Egypt and in more recent times in parts of Palestine, it was the middle class and famously often engineers who generated a lot of the most violent radicalism. So that's an interesting surprise if what you find is today the Egyptian bourgeois middle-class members of the Brotherhood are not as susceptible as one might have thought to a message of radical violent resistance.
Yeah, I think part of this because of the Muslim Brotherhood's relation with the society itself. Yes, the Muslim Brotherhood could be considered as a distinct group of the Egyptian society, but at the same time, the Muslim Brotherhood actually is a vertical sector of the Egyptian society. So you'll find the members related by blood to police officers and military officers. You'll find members who are professors in the universities, teachers, and peasants or workers. And this kind of group, yeah, it's very difficult for it, or this is how I see it, to be radicalized in a large scale.
So just to be clear about what I think you're saying that the Muslim Brotherhood is so deeply integrated with all sectors of society at this late stage of its development that members of the Brotherhood will have family members or direct relatives who are in the security forces or in education or working as peasants farming the land. And that means that they're no longer capable, as they might have been at an earlier stage, of viewing themselves as somehow separate and apart from society and therefore willing to start a war or an armed uprising.
Yes, that's true. And this is the social factor, but also there is an ideological factor. The Muslim Brotherhood, since its foundation, Hassan al-Banna made it very clear that the Muslim Brotherhood are not for the revolution. He did not call for a radical change of the regime, even if historical facts say that the free officers who initiated the military coup that ousted the monarchy in Egypt or ended the monarchy in Egypt was initiated. The group of the free officers was somehow initiated by members of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Brotherhood members were very crucial part of the movement, especially in the early stages. But the Muslim Brotherhood did not want to associate themselves with the free officers since the very beginning, and they did not want to introduce themselves as revolutionary or as a revolutionary movement.
Let's take a quick break.
What exactly would a progressive foreign policy look like in the Middle East? The lines of critique are clear. Providing realistic policy proposals is a whole other thing, and much more difficult. I'm Dan Ben-Aim, and with my colleagues at the Century Foundation, we're trying to ask and answer the hard policy questions and come up with specific proposals that move the ball forward. You can see our ideas and join the conversation yourself at our website, tcf.org.
I'm Thanassis Cambanis. You're listening to Order from Ashes. We're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood with Abdelrahman Ayyash and Michael Wahid Hanna. In the last section of our conversation, you've raised so many interesting things, both of you. I want to ask you about two of the things that have really been evident in your recent research. And one is to tell us a little bit about what actually are the points of disagreement between the leadership and the rank and file. And secondly, what is the role of Turkey? What kind of role is Turkey assuming in this organization now that it is the central host and staging ground of this historic organization?
Yeah, as you said, Thanassi, the Muslim Brotherhood now are mainly present in many countries, and Turkey actually could be one of the main countries that host the large numbers of the Muslim Brotherhood. We are talking about maybe 20,000, maybe more, of the Muslim Brotherhood members, including the main leadership body of the whole group right now. Most of the leadership, the key leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood are based in Istanbul for the time being. This had many effects on the group. First, I think that the model that Erdogan or the AK party presented, the ruling AK party presented in Turkey, is affecting the imagination or the political imagination of the Muslim Brotherhood as members and leaders. For one, Erdogan is a very successful leader when it comes to his mobilization to his supporters, when it comes to actually his economic successes, when it comes to his ability to maneuver with the military and to push the military to the side after many years where the military was present in or heavily presented in Turkish politics. These are successes that the Muslim Brotherhood are looking at in a very fondly way. The other thing that could be very effective also in the progress of the Muslim Brotherhood right now is how the young members of the movement are viewing the Turkish society. The Turkish society is somehow, or to some extent, a liberal society. It's very vibrant. It has opposition still, at least, and it has very liberal parties and very active political life. I think this idea of freedom and liberalism is affecting the young members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Many of whom I talked to, they were talking about how they don't feel connected with the ideas of the Muslim Brotherhood right now. Some of them are or said that they are not even connected with the religion anymore. They don't feel that what they have been brought up into is representing them anymore. The relations. I mean, when it comes to females and males, these relations are much different now than before, and this all was affected by their presence in the Turkish society.
So they're becoming more liberal somehow, or
yes, they are becoming more liberal. They are becoming more interested in experiencing different things that were totally prohibited before that. It's very obvious that many Egyptian youth who were once members of the Muslim Brotherhood or are very active members of the Muslim Brotherhood, if we want to talk about females, for example, they started to take off their veils or their hijabs, and males, for example, they started to have girlfriends, and they started to be in physical relationships with women, and this is totally different from what the society in Egypt allows, and of course from what the Muslim Brotherhood wanted for them.
Does this suggest that these kinds of liberalizing youth will, in a sense, lose their influence for other Egyptians because they'll seem like liberal foreigners? Because Egypt is a very conservative society, and we know this, but our listeners might not. It's very conservative across the board. It's not just Islamists and the Muslim Brothers who are conservative. Like, the vast majority of people are very socially conservative and are very religious. So is that going to erode the sort of connection or the influence that these kinds of activists can have?
I think so. If you followed actually the media, the pro-government media, the pro-Sisi media in Egypt right now, they are smearing Turkey for being too liberal, for supporting LGBT and things like that. And now we are
just as we're watching Turkey slide down into an authoritarian black hole, Egypt views them as going out on a liberal flight of fancy.
Yeah, and the other things that they are saying that yes, the Muslim Brotherhood is being supported by the Caliph or the Sultan who is supporting LGBT in his own country, and he's not. Yeah, I mean, this is not even true. But now we are facing a military government in Egypt who is also prosecuting women and girls for being on social media or for dancing before cameras. That's what we are facing right now. And this military regime presented itself as the liberators of Egypt, or as the liberator of Egypt from the Islamic movement, or for the Islamic rulers. But what I want to say is that these social changes could not be seen as very crucial, but for the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood, this means the end of the young base of the Muslim Brotherhood. The leadership, they see that the movement is not a political movement. They see that the Muslim Brotherhood as a religious movement, and when it loses its religious values, it loses everything. And I think this is what the main difference between the people in Turkey, or the Egyptians in Turkey, and the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood is. The other thing is that the many young people of the Muslim Brotherhood, they feel, and they have the right to feel so, that the leadership has no strategy whatsoever when it comes to counter the coup or to face the Sisi regime in Egypt. They have been there for 7 years now outside Egypt, but they didn't do anything for the Egyptian people or for the Muslim Brotherhood members. This, I mean, maybe in 2014 or 2015, a year or two after the coup, it could have been easier for them. But right now, no, they are trying to find other ways to support themselves. Even in terms of finances, but also in terms of ideology, and to give themselves some sort of ideological remedy that the Muslim Brotherhood couldn't provide them with.
Abdelrahman, you've described a series of very varied responses to this period of repression and exile.
Yeah.
What I wonder about the most is, this is an open-ended period of repression. I think that the Sisi regime has a lot of sources of continued sustainability. It's hard to predict when we enter a new chapter. It's clear that there won't be a political course correction within Egypt under this current political order.
Yes.
And so, it's hard to put a time frame on this discussion, but what do you imagine emerges in the near future or the medium term? What do you think the Brotherhood is going to look like? And of course, it might be several brotherhoods in one sense, but what is it? What is the group evolving toward at the moment under these very unprecedented circumstances?
Yeah. Actually, because we are talking about Turkey, I think it's very important to monitor how the older version of the Muslim Brotherhood, or the equivalent of the Muslim Brotherhood in Turkey, look like right now after the emergence of Erdogan. The equivalent of the Muslim Brotherhood in Turkey was the movement that called Milli Gurush, or the national movement that was led by Najmuddin Arbakan, and it's been there since the 60s and 70s. This movement right now is represented in politics by a party that is not even able to get the threshold to enter the parliament. I think if the Muslim Brotherhood continued their way with the same strategies or with the same tactics, the Muslim Brotherhood will become an obsolete organization in Egypt. They will not be able to provide reasons for their supporters to continue supporting them, and for their constituency to elect them anymore. But at the same time, the question of religion is not over yet. I mean, the Egyptians, they still vote for, or they still respect religious people, and I'm sorry to say that, but they are being easily manipulated, or it's very easy to manipulate Egyptians with void slogans that include religion and religious promises. And I think that this will continue to happen, or this religious discourses will be used again by different factions. But the other thing is that the young members of the Muslim Brotherhood right now, who lost their trust in the leadership, I think many of them are trying to get back to the foundations of the movement. Maybe the literature of Hassan al-Banna, maybe the literature of other Islamic intellectuals or Muslim intellectuals from Egypt and from other countries. And they are trying to build upon this to create something. Maybe they will make use of the mistakes of the Muslim Brotherhood, but I think that what we'll be seeing, it will be much different from what the Muslim Brotherhood look like right now.
And I think the smart institutional bet is to not count out the Brotherhood, because as we know, there's a lot of path dependency, and there isn't any other non-state political movement in Egypt that has this kind of long-standing organizational prowess and ability to mobilize. So despite all the caveats you raised, there's a safe bet that in the years to come, the Brotherhood will continue to be a significant pole of political thought and action in Egypt. We'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to the Order from Ashes podcast from the Century Foundation. I'm Thanassis Cambanis, and we've been talking with Abdelrahman Ayyash, an independent researcher based in Washington, D.C., and longtime observer of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, and Michael Wahid Hanna, a senior fellow at the Century Foundation and expert on Egypt. Thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Order from Ashes, the international affairs podcast from the Century Foundation. If you've enjoyed what you heard, please rate us and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It'll make it easier for other listeners to find us and help us to keep producing these conversations. Thanks for listening. Till next time.